class. I hope all of you are having a great week so far, and thank you so much for joining me today. Let me start off my presentation by asking each and every one of you a question. Should we continue to value texting as one of our primary avenues of communication? To that I say probably not, and I'll get to the why behind that in just a moment, but first let me tell you a story of how I became interested in this topic. One day I was in the break room and I noticed everybody in that break room was texting each other instead of talking to one another, which sparked two questions in my mind. The first one being is, why were they texting instead of talking to one another? And then the second question that sparked in me was, why do we text so often? And I came up with three answers to that. The first answer is because it's easy. Second one is because it's convenient. The third one is because, well, sometimes it's quite frankly necessary. Just to give you an idea of how much Americans text, we send out over 1 trillion texts a year. Now, I just want to take a second to think about that. That's right, we send over 1 trillion texts out a year. That stat comes courtesy of the Interpersonal Communications Playbook. Now, in this presentation, I have three main topics that I wish to cover. The first one being is that it's really easy to miscommunicate over a text message. The second one is please ignore the ping when you're in the middle of a conversation. And the third is that face-to-face conversations is easily one of the most important traits one can learn. Like I said earlier, it's really easy to miscommunicate over a text message. And that could be for a variety of reasons. So the first reason could be that is I can interpret a text 100 different ways because it lacks the tone of voice, it lacks inflection, and it lacks nonverbal cues. And so I read an article earlier this week by lifesize.com which states that most experts agree that 70 to 93% of our communication is done through our non-verbal cues. Think about that for a second. That is 70 to 93% that we are not utilizing when we text. So why are we taking the easy route when we could be going and having those face-to-face conversations, but instead we're texting and sacrificing that 70 to 93%. Also, like I said earlier, ignore the ping whenever possible. What I mean by that is, let's just say you and me are in the middle of a conversation. You're telling me a really important event that's happening in your life right now. And all of a sudden, a text alarm goes off from my pocket. I pick it up, I check what the text says, I respond to it. You're probably going to think that was extremely rude, and I would not blame you for that assessment, because I would think the same of you as well if you did the same. Not only would that be rude, that severely damages that interpersonal communication experience we had going between the two of us. Sadly, nowadays, most humans today have been conditioned, kind of like Pavlov's dogs, but in this case our phone, to respond whenever possible. It's even gotten to the point where texting has had such an extreme influence on us where we'll do it even when we're behind the wheel. Sadly, that yields disastrous results. So please ignore the ping whenever possible. And my last point is our face-to-face communications are extraordinarily important. What I mean by that is we need to develop our face-to-face communication skills. We don't do text interviews. We don't develop relationships over text message. There are a lot of pivotal life events that don't happen from behind the display of your iPhone. Our most meaningful interpersonal connections happen when we are face to face. when we're texting each other, we lack that depth, interpersonal communication depth that we would be having if we were face to face. Just to give you an idea of how much texting has took off since 2005, texting has skyrocketed by 10,772%. That skyrocketing would say that's an understatement by me saying that. That stat comes courtesy of textrequest.com. Now, let me leave you with this article that I read off NBCnews.com. They surveyed a bunch of teenagers on whether or not they would rather communicate via social media or text or via face-to-face communications. Sadly, in 2012, 49% of those teenagers said they would rather communicate face-to-face. Fast forward to 2018, that number has dramatically dropped to 32%. Is that really the direction we want to head moving forward? I hope the answer to that question is no. And please go out there and improve your face-to-face communication skills. Value them more than our electronic communications. If you do that, you'll be just fine. Thank you so much, and I hope all of you have a great week.